Good morning, everyone. Lots going on. As usual, today is Friday, July 17th, 2026. And sorry about yesterday. I was at the last minute of the show. Honestly, the last minute of the show, I was wrapping it up and we had a power outage that turned off my desktop. It had nothing to do with the computer failing or anything like that. Just a little power outage, a little blip. It didn't stay off for any length of time. It just turned off enough to turn off my computer and kill my recording. And I tried to repair it. I tried to fix it. I tried to finalize it. You can't like put it back into OBS and have it finalized. It just doesn't work like that. It should work like that. Maybe that's software as a service I could work on. My gosh. But I tried and it did not work and I was frustrated. So I couldn't do the show. I don't have time to redo the show. I almost did. I was like, I can restore this. I can fix this. I was like, no, you can't. You can't. You don't have time, Mark. So I'm sorry, but that's just how it was. And I hope it doesn't happen again. I haven't changed the settings yet because the MKV that's produced doesn't upload cleanly to all of the places that I upload. And then I need to transform it after, which takes another hour, and that's not worthwhile. So I'm just kind of stuck right yet. And I'm testing some stuff, but again, I'm busy. So I'm doing my best. Ongoing computer problems. Sorry about yesterday. Dearborn, Michigan, Home Depot. They're adding Arabic. Super cool. That's super good. What's going on? Trump's in the White House and this stuff is carrying on at pace. And that's surprising. I didn't think that was going to happen for sure. I thought Trump would turn it back or stop it or something like that. Nope. Innocent until proven guilty. Not in Canada. Not anymore, says Carney. So repeat offenders, I might be okay with it. But violent offenders, if... You can't have the presumption of innocence flipped on its head. That doesn't work. Wildfire smoke is not climate change, but they're trying to sell it as climate change. The United States are very upset about the wildfire smoke and they want to sanction Canada. And there's a whole lot of other stuff to get to. So let's get to it. First, we're talking about Trump yesterday. Trump addressed the nation at 9 p.m. and he released classified documentation backing up what he's been saying regarding the stolen elections and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I find that very interesting. The important part is the declassification of the evidence to back up what Trump is saying. And so all of the major networks decided we're not going to air that. We can't have Trump talking about election interference on mainstream TV. So they all decided not to air President Trump's speech. So that's interesting. Awakened Outlaw says the big three networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, not covering Trump's White House speech tonight. When it comes out, and it absolutely is going to come out, that all three of them were complicit in knowingly helping to provide cover for the stolen election, their decision to not carry his speech tonight will make all the sense in the world. And so maybe, that's speculation, but maybe. This is an interesting juxtaposition. Roger says CNN, ABC, NBC, which aired Joe Biden's red speech, pictured below, in which he declared that half the country consists of domestic terrorists, are refusing to air President Trump's address to the nation. Democracy dies in darkness, as they say. And so interesting. And so I wanted to watch it because the mainstream media didn't want me to watch it. So I watched it in real time, which is not usually, I don't usually do that. I like to watch it in double speed. So listening to things in real time, it sounds slow to me. Even me talking sounds slow, which is why I kind of talk fast sometimes. Anyway, Michelle Moore says, this is how we know which outlets are actually influenced by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, pretty much all mainstream media and legacy media. And so the New York Times, after Trump's speech, put this headline out: Trump makes outlandish claims about election results in address. But he declassified the material. If you want to watch it, it's not that long. It was just, 20 minutes? 20 minutes-ish. And it was good. It was interesting. I found it kind of funny. There were funny bits. And so Colonel Towner Watkins says, having listened to Trump's speech, none of the people who've been on the journey of uncovering the CIA and their nefarious activities were surprised by anything he said. I'd like to point out a few very important things. The documents Trump declassified will expedite everything happening in the grand juries in Fort Pierce, because the fact that they were classified draws out the timeline exponentially, and that isn't a small thing. 2, he mentioned that the intel agencies, journalists, large U.S. corporations, unions, etc., were all involved with the U.S. government, and China, as early as 2018, in interfering in elections, creating negative stories, and undermining Trump. That's treason. 3, he specifically called out Obama's involvement in all of it. 4, he confirmed that everyone that was involved in challenging the 2020 election showed up in D.C. on 1/6 were all right. 5, he noted that the FBI, the DHS, the CIA, and other government agencies worked to coup the country. 6, they systematically, overtly, and consistently work to hide critical intelligence from the president, and that is treason. 7, he noted the FBI put critical intel and proof of election interference in burn bags to destroy the evidence. 8, he noted the CIA sat on information confirming the election systems were compromised and overtly hid it. 9, he noted on the ongoing cover-up of the criminal conspiracy to overthrow the government is being hidden by NBC and ABC. 10, by notifying the state governments that their election data is compromised, he will force them to take action or they will be guilty of conducting known fraudulent elections. 11, the FBI discovered that China was manufacturing ballots for Joe Biden and they covered it up. 12, the CIA is required to inform the Congress, and they didn't, and instead signed documents stating it was the most secure election in history. 13, over 250,000 non-citizens are registered to vote in the United States. While many people will say we knew all of this already, this wasn't for those who knew all of this. It was to ensure that the legal system can use declassified documents to expedite what will begin to occur today. Accountability, maybe, fingers crossed. Haven't seen that yet, so I haven't seen the headlines that anybody's been arrested, so we'll see. It will provide the impetus to make drastic changes to the election process in the United States. That might happen. It's now publicly forces Congress to act. My caution, this requires the same organizations, the Department of Homeland Security, the CIA, the FBI, etc., that committed treason to launch investigations of their own organizations, which from my experience inside government never works. It's my opinion that we have moved to another phase of the operation. The speed will increase exponentially. Yeah, this is show and tell time. So this is interesting. We're going to listen to this, and this is just a part of Trump calling out China, but I think it's worthwhile. Again, the speech is less than 20 minutes. Maybe it's 25 minutes or something like that. So here's Trump talking about China.
They did not disclose to me as president or to anyone else, and to the best of our knowledge, they did not inform Congress. In fact, all they kept saying is, this is the most secure election in the history of our country. A standard, very pat line that was divvied out to say the cover-up of this colossal security breach is even more disturbing in light of the additional information showing that China engaged in other election-related activities to undermine my first administration and our 2020 campaign. They did not want, and they just didn't want it. They fought like hell not to have it, Donald Trump, to win, and for good reason. As the documents we are releasing show, CIA reporting explicitly stated, and I quote, in mid-2018, the Chinese Communist Party's policy was to leverage all domestic and foreign elements that were opposed to the U.S. president in an effort to reduce the U.S. president's votes and make him resign or prevent his re-election. Isn't that nice? Also, in mid-2018, China was working to influence the results of the U.S. midterm elections and later the results of the 2020 presidential election itself. Separately, in mid-2019, the Chinese government's strategy against the United States was focused on undermining domestic confidence in the U.S. president. They wanted to just make you sound like your president wasn't so hot, when actually your president has done a great job, and they did everything possible to do exactly that.
Okay, so there you go. And again, when Trump makes voices and stuff, I think it's funny. He's a showman, and it makes me laugh. Here is Libs of TikTok. President Trump reveals that China hacked more than 220 million U.S. voter files during the 2020 election cycle, which include people's personal and sensitive information. And Democrats said it was the most secure election in history. So crazy, right? Like, that's a pretty big deal, Really, you think, right? MJ Truth Ultra says, wow, China is Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is China. China planned to incite racial unrest and blame white people hating black people to sabotage Trump. China had extensive plans to influence or to use influence and cyber operations to turn public opinion against the Trump administration. They specifically targeted racial tensions, planning to allege that white people hate black people, incite demonstrations and marches to highlight racial divides, increase conflict between police and anti-racism activists, create the impression that the U.S. law enforcement resents the government and people of color. Other themes include political party fights, Congress versus Trump conflicts, women's rights, and alleged U.S. war plans. China had the ability to spread messages across social media via TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and mainstream media using influencers. One option included gathering dirt on senior U.S. officials. This document shows that China was actively planning to weaponize racial division to damage President Trump ahead of the 2020 election, another act of war. And again, these things seem to be happening in Canada as well. And there are concerning now there is unclassified evidence, according to Trump, and they've released it at whitehouse.gov, so you can check for yourself. But I think that Canada is still under the thumb of influence and control, just like the United States was. If they can do it in the United States, Canada's got to be a cakewalk, right? Libs of TikTok, China created fake driver's licenses to get fraudulent mail-in ballots for Joe Biden. So there you go. Wow. And Wokeness says, there it is. China used CCP assets in the United States media and social media to incite 2020's BLM uprising. So these are people going through the documents from whitehouse.gov and pointing out like, holy cow, like this is pretty bad. So are people going to be arrested? Oh man, that would be fun, right? But fingers crossed. We'll see. We'll see. Seems like the only people arrested are the January 6ers, right? In Canada, it seems like the only people arrested, not the violent criminals. No. The violent criminals are the downtrodden in society. The people who need to be arrested are the people who notice and talk about it on the internet. Those are the people who need to be arrested. Yikes. David says, love this by the president, but I'm sorry, friends. I can't help but feel a little disappointed. There was no national emergency declared, no executive order. He has to know at this point that the Senate will still refuse to pass the Save America Act. I don't know. Hate to say it, but I'm feeling a little indifferent after going in extremely excited. Am I missing something? Tracy says, yes, you're missing something. President Trump just told the nation and the world why what's about to happen was necessary. I wasn't disappointed at all. This comes first. He declassified documents proving the claims. Now we will see some action. It's a process. Declassification always comes first. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe that'd be fun, but we'll see. Officer Lou says, meet Nikki Flores, FBI analyst who bragged about running a shadow government inside the Bureau, according to a just released declassified document. She's now director of insider risk at Microsoft. And so that's interesting. So the documents show that she's talking about running a shadow government on email, and now she's in an important director's position at Microsoft. Wow. Do you think that she's going to have consequences for talking like that? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Is that treason? Is that something that's arrestable? It seems like when the left does it, if you put flaming debris on a railroad track, just like you yourself, right, you'd get arrested, right? But if you were First Nations doing it during the 2017, 18, 19 era, right, that was just fine, right? If you block a neighborhood, block the traffic in a neighborhood, you might get arrested, right? But like if you're a part of a whole bunch of people praying on the street, no problems, right? So it's super double standard. Nick says, the Department of Justice needs to track down and jail every single journalist in America who took a penny from China to assist them in rigging the 2020 election. Absolutely no mercy. Per a newly declassified intelligence report, the Chinese government sought to identify U.S. journalists who had reported negatively on the U.S. president and pay them large sums of money to write more negative articles about him as they could. So yeah, there's a lot of influence, and most of it is churning out negative stories about the president, influencing the mood of the United States. Isn't that interesting? Mays says, April 2021, President Joe Biden claims that Russia interfered in the 2020 election and announces sanctions against them. Biden offered no proof of election interference and never mentioned China. That's what you call a smokescreen. So will Biden and his administration be held to account? Maybe. I thought they were trapped in the positions that they were in, right? But here we are years later and still nobody's been held to account, right? Kamala's thinking about it running again, which is insane. Eric says, holy cow, Caroline Levitt appears to confirm President Trump will be declassifying documents surrounding breaches in election security. Here we go. And this person says, how come there hasn't been any arrests yet? And she says, well, the papers haven't been declassified.
140 days now. If what he says is tonight is backed up by evidence, why hasn't anyone been charged?
Well, he hasn't revealed it yet. He hasn't declassified the documents yet, and you will see what he says tonight, and then we'll move forward appropriately from there.
Tonight from the Justice Department?
I don't speak on behalf of the Justice Department, Caitlin. You know that. Rachel.
By evidence, will there be charges?
You'll have to ask the Justice Department. I don't charge people. I just speak on behalf of the president. Rachel.
140 days now.
So people are very skeptical. Very skeptical. I've seen supercuts of just the media, and it gives a very dour, negative outlook on it. And maybe Trump is actually trying to fix things. Although at the same time, after all of that, right, is something coming? Is there more to this? Is this the wind up and then the punch? I don't know. KC says, if Trump is so concerned about China stealing our elections, why is he importing 500,000 Chinese students? Good question. Remember when he was talking with this guy about the Chinese students and he likes it? And I was like, yeah, that's not so good. So in Canada, Mr. Sunshine Baby says it's official. China is currently interfering in the Canadian election to help Mark Carney become prime minister. Vote Mark Carney, sell out to China. And so this was, when was this? April 7th, 2025. And it's one of those things where we've been talking around this for a long, long time. President Trump's been talking about this for a long time. No evidence to back it up. They say no action, no nothing. And I think that Canada's just as bad as the United States was, and is probably still. And how do you begin to fix that? I don't know. I genuinely don't know, because it seems like we are in the throes of losing the game badly at this point in time. Do we have 1 point on the board? No, I don't. Not really. Wide Awake Media says, according to former UK Prime Minister Liz Truss, Western institutions have been taken over by unelected bureaucrats hell-bent on imposing open borders, net zero, and transgender ideology. She points to a revolving door of recent prime ministers as evidence that changing leadership does not alter core policies. Until we deal with that, we're not really going to change our country. That's why we keep changing prime ministers, but nothing really changes. And it's not just the battle we're fighting in Britain, it's a battle across Europe and Canada too. So we are all worse off for this ridiculousness, unfortunately. And it doesn't seem like there's a tactic that is successful at countering their current phalanx. We're screwed, and they're just marching right through us. So most people don't even know that they're marching. They're like, oh, look at these guys doing a parade. So it's not a parade, and that ain't no rainbow flag, okay? Table Salt says, I gotta say goodbye to the stream soon, but I'm gun shy to say goodbye to the stream because that's all of the show that I got yesterday. So I was very sad about that. So I'm sorry that we're going to go a little bit longer. This is our grab bag of governance. So Table Salt says, Greer confirms the United States is in their third round of negotiations with Mexico, but has no formal negotiations with Canada. Canada must be sewering this one on purpose. It does seem like that. It does seem like we're actively trying to tank our own trade talks with our biggest customer. And that seems like a really bad idea. Super bad idea. Very, very bad. Here's media pushing back on Tiff Macklem. And Wiretap Media says CTV News reporter calls bullshit on the governor of the Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklem's outlook on the Canadian economy. Then he admits the country is being propped up by debt-fueled consumer spending. When they tell you everything is fine, but the data tells a different story, prepare for what's coming next. I don't know how to prepare for what's coming next. I tried stockpiling chocolate cereal. That didn't work. I just had to eat a lot of chocolate cereal, which, I mean, I do that anyway. But how do you prepare for something like this? Buy gold? Buy silver? Silver's, they're bringing the price of silver back down. People in the Canada Poly chat think it's going to hit $35, which is where it was before. So there you go. And they need silver for building phones and building all sorts of other things like that. And if silver's very expensive, then that's bad for the price of phones and things like that. And it's already expensive. Have you seen the price of RAM? Here's Tiff Macklem.
Hello. Is it possible that you are being overly optimistic. I'm hearing so many caveats in your comments as to the state of the economy. At the same time, your business survey that you put out just a few days ago indicated that business sentiment has deteriorated over the past 3 quarters, or has deteriorated after improving over the past 3 quarters. So I'd like to get a better sense of the reality. You show. I'm sorry, I'm having problems expressing myself because the data seems conflicting at many points. So what I'm trying to get at is, do you really think that the economy is going to improve this year and over the next few years, given the constraints that we are feeling and facing right now?
Well, we're calling it as we see it. So yes, our baseline forecast is that the economy is going to improve. There are risks around that, as I've talked about. But to come back to why are we feeling more confident that the economy is expanding once again? Going back to some of the data I outlined at the outset, consumers, you got to give some credit to Canadian consumers. They've been resilient. They are consumer spending is still expanding. It's not a big number. There's very little population growth in the Canadian economy at the moment, so there's not new consumers entering the economy. But Canadian households are still spending. That is supporting growth.
It's a Ponzi scheme. If you need new players, it's a Ponzi scheme, right? So he's saying, oh yeah, well, there's not very many of those anymore. Juno News, this will be the last one, then I've got to say goodbye to the stream. Juno News says, more than a year after Prime Minister Carney took office on a promise to build 500,000 new homes annually, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says the pace of housing starts has fallen below last year's level, which is low, because building houses is not as lucrative as it used to be. You used to be able to build houses pretty cheap and sell them for a pretty good markup. And now the markup's still the same, I guess, but the number of buyers lower. People can't afford it. So anyway, with that, if you want the whole show, head over to Canada